डाइव। भारत में अल्पसंख्यक अधिकार, चुनौतियां और स्थिति। डिड यू नो कि इंडिया में ऑफिशियली 780 से ज्यादा लैंग्वेजेस बोली जाती हैं?
780? Wow.
हाँ, इमेजिन अ कंट्री दैट्स लाइक अ जायंट लाइब्रेरी ऑफ लैंग्वेजेस एंड कल्चर्स। बट इस लाइब्रेरी में कुछ किताबें गुम हो रही हैं। सो इन टुडेज डीप डाइव हम इसी के बारे में एक सुपर डिटेल्ड चर्चा करेंगे।
बिल्कुल।
ये थोड़ा लंबा होने वाला है दोस्त, सो ग्रैब योर कॉफी. And hey, before we start, if you love getting smarter with us, please quickly hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and give us a like. It really helps our channel grow.
Exactly. We're going to explore कि हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ने in all these diversities को बचाने के लिए क्या सुपर पावर्स दी हैं और ग्राउंड रियलिटी क्या है. So here's our game plan for today.
Okay, lay it out for us.
First, we'll unpack the constitutional rights given to minorities, where we'll discuss the specific problems faced by linguistic minorities. उसके बाद we'll take a closer look at the status and challenges of India's 6 officially recognized religious minorities, one by one: Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Jains.
Wow, that's a packed agenda. Ready for this super deep dive? चलो शुरू करते हैं.
Let's do it.
Topic name: Explain the constitutional rights accorded to minorities in India.
Broad micro theme: Understanding the constitutional shield for minorities.
भारत का संवैधानिक सुरक्षा कवच. Okay, so let's start with the absolute basics. The Constitution of India, basically it acts as a guardian, एक रक्षक, for our country's pluralism and multiculturalism.
The ultimate protector.
The ultimate protector. ये इस देश के diversity का सबसे बड़ा, shield है. और इसके लिए it recognizes two main types of minorities. First, religious minorities, यानी धर्म के आधार पर, and second, linguistic minorities.
भाषा के आधार पर.
Exactly. The whole point is about protecting diversity, not just tolerating it. समझे?
बिल्कुल. इसको एक रियल लाइफ एग्जांपल से सोचो. इमेजिन करो एक छोटा सा गांव जहां लोग एक बहुत यूनिक डायलेक्ट बोलते हैं जो आसपास के शहरों में कोई नहीं बोलता.
Okay.
नाउ आर्टिकल 29(1) ऑफ आवर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन उन्हें ये फंडामेंटल राइट देता है कि वो अपनी उस बोली को, उसके स्क्रिप्ट को, अपनी पूरी कल्चर को बचाएं.
कंजर्व करें.
हाँ, कंजर्व करें. मे बी वो एक कम्युनिटी रेडियो स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं जिसमें प्रोग्राम सिर्फ उसी डायलेक्ट में हो, या बच्चों के लिए उस डायलेक्ट में कॉमिक्स पब्लिश कर सकते हैं. दैट्स अ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल राइट इन एक्शन दोस्त. ये सिर्फ पेपर पर एक थ्योरी नहीं है.
That is so cool. चलो इसको थोड़ा और अनपैक करते हैं.
द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इज द अल्टीमेट रूल बुक. इट्स द सुप्रीम लॉ ऑफ द लैंड. और इसका गोल है टू एंश्योर दैट एवरीवन, वेदर दे बिलोंग टू अ मेजॉरिटी कम्युनिटी और अ माइनॉरिटी, फील्स सेफ.
और उन्हें ग्रो करने का स्पेस मिले.
एग्जैक्टली, अ स्पेस टू ग्रो. ये सिर्फ टॉलरेंस की बात नहीं है. इट्स अबाउट द सेलिब्रेशन ऑफ डाइवर्सिटी. Our founders wanted India to be a beautiful garden with many different kinds of flowers, not just one kind.
सही बात है.
But why were these rights needed in the first place? सवाल तो ये है.
Good question. Because in a country as vast and diverse as India, there's always a risk कि the culture, language and identity of smaller groups might get lost, या absorbed into the larger dominant culture.
It's like a big river absorbing smaller streams.
Perfect analogy. So these rights are a proactive step, एकदम proactive की तरह, to maintain our multicultural fabric and ensure कि कोई भी stream अपनी identity ना खो दे.
Okay, now for the super important part, the specific articles. Let's start with Article 29. इसके दो parts हैं, right?
Right. Article 29(1) कहता है, and I'm quoting here, any section of citizens having a distinct language, script or culture of its own shall have the right to conserve the same. यहाँ ये conserve word यानी संरक्षण करना बहुत important है. फिर आता है Article 29(2). ये कहता है कि स्टेट फंडेड एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस में या स्टेट से एड लेने वाले इंस्टीट्यूशंस में किसी को भी ऑन ग्राउंड्स ऑफ रिलीजन, रेस, कास्ट और लैंग्वेज एडमिशन से मना नहीं किया जा सकता.
So it's a non-discrimination guarantee.
Absolutely.
So एक राइट कल्चर को प्रोटेक्ट करता है और दूसरा राइट इंश्योर करता है कि एजुकेशन में भेदभाव ना हो. That's a powerful combination. लेकिन what about Article 30? इसमें क्या स्पेशल है?
Here's where it gets really interesting, दोस्त. Article 30 is a step further. Article 31 gives all minorities, both religious and linguistic, the right to establish and administer educational institutions of their choice.
Their choice. So अपनी मर्जी के स्कूल, कॉलेज.
हाँ, अपनी मर्जी के स्कूल, कॉलेज या यूनिवर्सिटी खोल सकते हैं और चला सकते हैं. और 32 ये इंश्योर करता है कि सरकार जब ग्रांट्स या एड देगी तो उनके साथ इसलिए भेदभाव नहीं करेगी because they are run by minority. It's a double protection.
Wow. और स्पेसिफिकली फॉर लिंग्विस्टिक माइनॉरिटीज, भाषाई अल्पसंख्यकों के लिए कोई और स्पेशल प्रोविजंस है?
हाँ बिल्कुल. इसके लिए 3 की आर्टिकल्स है, याद रखना.
ओके, 3.
फर्स्ट, आर्टिकल 347. ये प्रेसिडेंट को पावर देता है कि वो किसी स्टेट में एक लैंग्वेज को ऑफिशियली रिकॉग्नाइज कर सकते हैं अगर वहां की सब्सटैंशियल पॉपुलेशन ये डिमांड करती है.
सब्सटैंशियल पॉपुलेशन, ओके.
सेकंड, आर्टिकल 350A. ये स्टेट्स को डायरेक्ट करता है टू प्रोवाइड फैसिलिटीज फॉर इंस्ट्रक्शन इन द मदर टंग एट द प्राइमरी स्टेज फॉर चिल्ड्रन बिलोंगिंग टू लिंग्विस्टिक माइनॉरिटीज. सोचो छोटे बच्चों के लिए ये कितना इंपॉर्टेंट है कि वो अपनी माँ की बोली में बेसिक एजुकेशन ले.
बहुत ज्यादा.
एंड थर्ड, आर्टिकल 350B. इसके अंडर एक स्पेशल ऑफिसर फॉर लिंग्विस्टिक माइनॉरिटीज अपॉइंट करने का प्रोविजन है. इस ऑफिसर का काम है इन सभी सेफगार्ड्स को मॉनिटर करना और एक रिपोर्ट सीधे प्रेसिडेंट को सबमिट करना.
Real world impact. So the real world impact of this is huge. These articles mean a community can run its own schools, like we see so many famous Christian or Sikh institutions.
बिल्कुल.
And children can hopefully learn in their mother tongue in primary school. और एक special officer है to listen to their grievances. It's a complete framework of protection and promotion.
So to conclude this part, The Constitution doesn't just pay lip service to the idea of minority rights. It provides concrete, actionable, and legally enforceable rights.
That's the keyword, enforceable. So Article 29(1) culture बचाने के लिए है. But what's the real difference between conserving your culture under Article 29 and establishing your own institution under Article 30? ये थोड़ा confusing लग सकता है.
Excellent question. देखो, conserve is about protection, preservation. It's a defensive right. मान लो अपनी भाषा को जिंदा रखना.
Establish is about creation, administration and growth. ये एक proactive right है. मान लो उस भाषा को पढ़ाने के लिए एक पूरा स्कूल खोलना. समझे? It's the difference between saving a single plant and planting a whole new garden.
Cool analogy. बहुत अच्छा. Okay, next question. अगर एक minority school government से aid लेता है, तो क्या उसमें सिर्फ minority students ही पढ़ सकते हैं? नहीं, बिल्कुल नहीं. That's where Article 29(2) comes back into play with its non-discrimination clause. अगर institution states से funding ले रहा है, तो उन्हें non-minority students के लिए भी doors open रखने होंगे.
अच्छा.
So it's a beautiful balance between minority rights and the principle of equality.
Makes sense. ये special officer under Article 350B, इनकी power क्या है? Can they enforce things या वो सिर्फ एक reporting body है?
Their primary role is to investigate and report. While they don't have direct enforcement power like a court, उनकी report to the president holds immense weight. It can trigger government action and put pressure on state governments to implement the safeguards properly.
So they are basically the eyes and ears of the Constitution for linguistic minorities.
Exactly. The eyes and ears. Perfect.
Article 350A mother tongue education की बात करता है. पर what if एक language की script ही ना हो? बहुत सी tribal languages की script नहीं होती. How does that work?
That is one of the biggest challenges in implementation. और हम इस पर अगले सेक्शन में डिटेल में बात करेंगे. The constitutional provision is a goal. एक लक्ष्य है.
Right.
उसको अचीव करने के लिए स्क्रिप्ट्स डेवलप करनी पड़ती हैं, टीचर्स को ट्रेन करना पड़ता है और टेक्स्ट बुक्स क्रिएट करनी पड़ती है. द इंटेंट ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इज क्रिस्टल क्लियर, बट द एग्जीक्यूशन वो टफ पार्ट है.
Got it. Last question on this. इन सब आर्टिकल्स में minority word को कहीं डिफाइन किया गया है? Who exactly is a minority?
Fascinatingly, the Constitution of India does not define the term minority.
Really?
हाँ, it's been left to the courts and the government to interpret. Generally, religious minorities are identified at the national level, while linguistic minorities are determined on a state-by-state basis. ये flexibility बहुत की है, क्योंकि तमिलनाडु में हिंदी स्पीकर एक linguistic minority है, but उत्तर प्रदेश में नहीं.
Now pause and practice saying this part aloud.
Article 29 is for conservation of culture, while Article 30 is for the establishment of institutions.
In short,
The Constitution provides powerful tools for both religious and linguistic minorities to protect their identity and promote their growth.
awesome. तो ये तो हुई कानूनी सुरक्षा की बात.
हाँ.
लेकिन अब आते हैं जमीनी हकीकत पर. Starting with linguistic minorities.
Topic name?
Discuss the problems faced by linguistic minorities in India.
Broad micro theme?
The silent struggle of India's languages.
भाषाई अल्पसंख्यकों की चुनौतियां.
Okay, so what is a linguistic minority? Basically, any community जिनकी mother tongue उस state या region की majority language से अलग है.
Simple.
With 780 plus languages, you can imagine India में ऐसी बहुत सारी communities हैं. For example, a Bengali-speaking family living in Delhi is a linguistic minority.
Exactly. और इसका daily life impact सोचो. Imagine you move to a new city, जहां हर कोई एक ऐसी लैंग्वेज बोलता है जो आपको बिल्कुल नहीं आती. ऑफिस के ईमेल्स, मार्केट में साइंस, गवर्नमेंट फॉर्म्स, एवरीथिंग.
Oh, that would be so difficult.
हाँ, आपको एक अच्छी जॉब मिलने में, बैंकिंग करने में, इवन अपने बच्चों के स्कूल एडमिशन में कितनी डिफिकल्टी होगी. This is the daily reality for millions of people in India.
Let's deep dive into this. Well, the Constitution provides powerful safeguards on paper. The ground reality is often very tough. The People's Linguistic Survey of India, यानी PLSI, ने जो figures दिए हैं, वो honestly shocking है.
Shocking is the right word.
The PLSI data reveals a major crisis. उनके according, 220 languages have been lost in the last 50 years alone.
220.
हाँ, and around 400 more are at risk of disappearing. दोस्त, ये सिर्फ words का loss नहीं है. It's the loss of entire cultures, histories, and unique knowledge systems. And सबसे ज़्यादा vulnerable हैं tribal languages, जो often oral होती हैं और उनकी script नहीं होती.
Core logic. तो इनके core problems क्या हैं? Let's break them down first. जैसे हमने डिस्कस किया, the rapid loss of languages. The rate of language death is alarming. जब एक लैंग्वेज मरती है, तो उसके साथ उस कम्युनिटी की स्टोरीज, सॉन्ग्स एंड विजडम भी चली जाती है.
It's a tragedy.
Second, ineffective implementation of constitutional safeguards. Article 350A sounds great, right? Primary education in mother tongue. But where are the teachers trained in these hundreds of minority languages? Where are the textbooks?
Resources ही नहीं है.
Bilkul. Lack of resources, lack of funds, and sometimes the lack of a script makes implementation very, very weak on the ground.
Third, discriminatory state policies. अक्सर minorities feel कि state policies में एक bias है towards the majority language. इसका एक classic example है the widespread opposition in southern states against what they see as Hindi imposition.
Right?
या फिर the anger of Gorkhas in West Bengal over the perceived imposition of Bengali in their schools. Fourth problem. Fourth, discrimination in daily life. ये बहुत subtle but powerful है. Better jobs, better education, and even getting quick service in a government office often requires proficiency in the dominant language. This creates a huge pressure on parents to teach their kids the dominant language instead of their mother tongue.
Right. So that they can succeed in life. Makes sense.
And fifth, the politicism of language. As the anthropologist Führer Hammondorf pointed pointed out, some political leaders unfortunately see minority languages as a threat to national integration. वो इसको देश की एकता के लिए खतरा बनाकर प्रेजेंट करते हैं, which creates a hostile atmosphere.
Real world impact.
ये सब एक vicious cycle बनाता है ना. A child doesn't learn their mother tongue properly at school, so they don't feel confident enough to pass it on to their children. And फिर over a few generations, the language dies.
It's a silent cultural tragedy happening all around us.
In conclusion, the problems are systemic. They range from lack of resources and political will to deep-rooted social pressure and discrimination.
So 220 languages lost in 50 years? ये figure बहुत बड़ा है. How does a language actually die? Does it just vanish one day?
Great question. A language officially dies when the last person who speaks it fluently passes away. But the process of dying starts much, much earlier.
Okay.
It starts when parents, for very practical reasons, stop teaching it to their children, thinking कि ये language उन्हें future में job नहीं दिलाएगी. It's a gradual fading, not a sudden event. It dies in homes before it dies in the world.
That's profound. You mentioned lack of script as a major hurdle. Can't we just use the Roman script or the Devanagari script for these languages to solve the problem?
We can, and it's often done as a temporary solution. But हर language के अपने unique sounds होते हैं, अपनी phonetics होती है, जो एक foreign script perfectly capture नहीं कर पाती. Developing a dedicated or even an adapted script is a massive ethno-linguistic project. It requires linguistic experts, community agreement, and huge resources to create educational materials in it. It's not a simple copy-paste job.
Right. So what is this three-language formula we often hear about? And how does it affect linguistic minorities?
That's a key education policy. It suggests that students should learn 3 languages: Hindi, English, and one modern Indian language. The problem is, for a child from a linguistic minority community, this becomes a 4th language after their mother tongue.
Oh, wow.
Mother tongue plus Hindi plus English plus a regional language. It's a huge cognitive burden on a young child.
I can imagine. When you say politicization of language, what does that look like on the ground? Can you give an example?
It looks like promising to make a certain language official just before an election to get votes from that community, या फिर creating fear कि एक language दूसरी language को खत्म कर देगी. It becomes a tool to divide people for political gain instead of finding genuine, inclusive solutions.
So what's the most urgent step needed right now to save these endangered languages?
2 things, in my opinion. First, documentation. Before these languages disappear forever, we must document them using modern technology. We need to create digital dictionaries, record native speakers, write down their folklore.
A digital archive.
Exactly. It's a race against time. The second is to take Article 350A seriously and make mother tongue education at the primary level a functional reality, not just a promise.
Now pause and practice saying this part aloud. The biggest threats to linguistic minorities are language loss, poor implementation of safeguards, and discrimination.
In short, despite strong constitutional protection, linguistic minorities in India face a tough battle for survival due to systemic neglect and social pressures.
ये भाषा की बात हुई. अब हम धर्म के आधार पर बने अल्पसंख्यक समुदायों को देखें. So let's start with India's largest minority, the Muslim community. उनकी ज़मीनी हकीकत क्या कहती है?
Topic name: discuss the status and problems faced by Muslims in India.
Broad micro-theme. India's largest minority, a socio-economic snapshot.
भारत में मुस्लिम समुदाय, स्थिति और चुनौतियां.
Okay, so let's talk about India's Muslim community. They are one of the 6 officially recognized religious minorities and according to the 2011 census, form 14.2% of India's population.
That's a huge number. It is. This makes them the single largest minority group in the country. So ये एक बहुत significant community है. And understanding their status is crucial to understanding India.
बिल्कुल. इसको एक example से feel करते हैं. Imagine a highly skilled artisan in a small town. He makes beautiful, intricate handicrafts. I mean, everyone praises them.
Okay.
But his income is very low. और वो एक बैंक से लोन लेने के लिए struggle करता है to expand his small business. He dreams कि उसके बच्चे डॉक्टर या इंजीनियर्स बने. But the high illiteracy rates and lack of quality schools in his locality make that dream seem very, very distant.
That really paints a picture.
This simple story captures the economic and educational struggle that is highlighted in the official data.
Let's break this down further.
We'll now look at the social, economic, and educational status of the Muslim community in India, focusing on the data and reports mentioned in the sources. The idea is to move beyond opinions and look at the facts.
Data is key. Background: social status. Socially, the community has 2 major denominations: the Sunni, who are in the majority, and the Shia. But importantly, the sources point out that a caste-like hierarchy also exists with Indian Muslims.
Really? A caste-like hierarchy?
It's a uniquely South Asian phenomenon. The hierarchy is broadly divided into Ashraf, considered of noble foreign descent, Ajlaf, lower caste converts, and Arzal, the most degraded Dalit converts.
Wow, I didn't know that.
For matters like marriage and inheritance, their personal laws are administered by religious groups. Core logic: economic and educational status. यहाँ पर the National Sample Survey Office's 68th round data from 2011-12 is key. Let's look at the numbers.
Okay, hit me with the stats.
Income. The average per capita consumption expenditure for a Muslim person was just 32 rupees 6 paisa per day.
32 rupees a day. That's incredibly low.
It is. A very stark indicator of widespread poverty.
The labor force participation rate, or LFPR, is low. It's 342 per thousand in urban areas and 337 in rural areas. This is the lowest among all major religious communities in India.
The lowest. Wow.
Nature of work. In rural areas, they are predominantly artisans and agricultural laborers. In urban areas, they are mostly self-employed artisans or industrial workers in the informal sector.
This is perhaps the most worrying statistic. Around half of the Muslim population over the age of 15 is either illiterate or has only managed to complete primary or middle school education.
Just half the population. That's huge.
Real-world impact, problems faced. So, what is the real-world impact of these numbers?
First, poverty and illiteracy. The statistics create what economists call a vicious circle of poverty. Low education leads to low-paying jobs. Low-paying jobs lead to poverty.
And poverty, in turn, prevents the next generation from getting a good education. It's a trap.
Exactly. It's a trap that's very hard to escape.
Second, discrimination and violence. The sources highlight that the community often faces stereotyping and is vulnerable to communal violence. The horrific examples of the Dadri lynching and the Muzaffarnagar riots are cited as instances of this vulnerability.
And third?
And third, underrepresentation. The Sachar Committee report of 2006 was a landmark report that highlighted this major issue. It showed significant underrepresentation of Muslims in the legislature, the executive, and the bureaucracy. This underrepresentation means their voice isn't adequately heard in policymaking, which further increases their vulnerability.
Conclusion, way ahead. The path forward, as suggested by the sources, is twofold. First, the state needs to provide active support through specially designed educational and economic schemes to break that vicious cycle.
And second, political parties must make a conscious effort to encourage more Muslim participation and representation in the political process.
That makes sense. The term caste system is usually associated with Hinduism. How did it become so prevalent among Indian Muslims, which is a religion that preaches equality?
What's fascinating here is that it's a result of cultural synthesis and historical context. It's not a religious doctrine, but a social reality.
So it's cultural, not religious.
Exactly. Many converts to Islam in India over the centuries carried their pre-existing caste identities with them. Over time, a social hierarchy developed that mirrored the surrounding social structures of the subcontinent. It's a powerful example of how culture can sometimes shape the practice of religion.
That is fascinating. Okay, that number, 32.6 rupees per day. What exactly does this per capita consumption expenditure tell us? How is it different from an income figure?
It's a very reliable proxy for income and standard of living, especially in an economy with a large informal sector, where income is hard to track.
Okay.
It's this low, it signifies widespread poverty and a daily struggle for basic necessities.
Got it. You mentioned the Sachar Committee report multiple times. Why is this 2006 report still so important today?
The Sachar Committee was a high-level committee set up by the Prime Minister's office to create a detailed report on the social, economic, and educational condition of Muslims in India.
Right.
Its 2006 report became a landmark document because it was the first time that the government itself, using hard data, officially acknowledged the community's backwardness and deep underrepresentation in all spheres of life. It moved the entire discussion from opinion and hearsay to cold, hard facts.
So it provided the evidence.
It provided the undeniable evidence. The source also mentions a low labor force participation rate, LFPR. What does that mean for the community's overall economy?
LFPR is the percentage of working-age people who are either employed or are actively looking for a job. A low LFPR, especially among women, is a huge economic red flag. It means a large part of the potential workforce is not contributing to the household income or the national economy. This inactivity deepens the cycle of poverty at the family level.
Right, it all connects back. How does underrepresentation in the bureaucracy or the police force specifically lead to vulnerability during, say, a communal riot?
It's about trust and access to justice. If a community is not represented in the local police force or the district administration, they may feel that their grievances won't be heard impartially, especially during times of high communal tension.
So it's a trust deficit.
Exactly. Representation builds trust in state institutions. When people see faces from their own community in positions of power, they feel more secure and confident that the system will be fair to them.
Now pause and practice saying this part aloud. Key issues for the Muslim community are the vicious circle of poverty and illiteracy, discrimination, and underrepresentation in public life.
In short, official data reveals significant developmental deficits for India's largest minority, which requires targeted state support and greater political inclusion to address.
Chalo, now let's move to the next minority community, the Christians. Unki story kya hai?
Topic name: discuss the status and problems faced by Christians in India.
Broad micro theme, a diverse community, contributions and concerns.
भारत में ईसाई समुदाय, स्थिति और चुनौतियां.
Okay, next up is the Christian community. They form about 2.3% of India's total population. Geographically, they are strongly concentrated in two main areas, South India, especially Kerala and Tamil Nadu, and in the states of Northeast India.
A great way to picture this community's role is to think of a highly skilled nurse from a Dalit Christian background working in a top-tier hospital in a big city.
Okay, I can picture that.
She is a vital part of India's healthcare system, representing the community's immense contribution to the social sector. However, within her own religious community, she might still face some subtle discrimination based on her caste origins.
So, this one image shows both the huge contribution and the internal social challenges the community grapples with.
Precisely.
Let's discuss the status in detail. The Christian community in India is incredibly diverse and has made outsized contributions, especially in the fields of education and healthcare. But they also face unique challenges, both from within and from outside.
Background, social status. Socially, there are many different denominations. You have the ancient Syrian Christians of Kerala, Roman Catholics, various Protestant groups, and very importantly, a large number of Dalit and tribal Christians.
So it's not a monolith.
Not at all. A key point from the sources is that the caste mentality, unfortunately, persists even after conversion, and Dalit Christians often face discrimination from so-called upper caste Christians. On a very positive note, their sex ratio is 1,023 females per 1,000 males, the highest among all religious groups in India. The source also notes that women generally enjoy more freedom within the community.
1023, that's a great statistic. Core logic, economic and educational status. What about their economic and educational status?
Economically and educationally, there's a divide. Upper caste Christians are often well-educated and hold service jobs, especially in the education and health sectors.
Which they pioneered in many parts of India.
Exactly. However, Dalit converts are often still stuck in low-paying traditional occupations. Despite this internal gap, their overall literacy rate is a very healthy 74%, which is above the national average.
Real-world impact, political status and problems. And what about politics? Politically, Christians are not organized into a single powerful political party. The source attributes this to a few reasons. Their relatively small size nationally, their fragmentation into many different denominations, and a generally secular mindset.
Which means they don't vote as a single religious bloc.
Correct. The main problem they face, as highlighted in the source, is the increasing number of attacks from fringe Hindu elements. These attacks are often justified by these groups in the name of Ghar Wapsi.
Ghar Wapsi? A very controversial term. Conclusion. Way ahead. What's the way forward then?
The way ahead suggested is clear. The state must provide better protection to the community and act as a strong deterrent for these aggressive fringe elements to ensure the community feels safe.
So this caste discrimination within the community, it's a direct contradiction of Christian teachings of equality, right? How does this still exist so strongly?
Absolutely. It's a classic example of deeply ingrained cultural practices overriding core religious tenets. The social structures of the Indian subcontinent, built around caste for thousands of years, are so powerful that they often permeate religious boundaries.
So people may change their faith, but it's much harder to change deep-seated social habits and prejudices.
Exactly that.
And the high sex ratio of 1023, that's a fantastic social indicator. What are the likely reasons for that?
It's generally attributed to a combination of positive factors. Higher female literacy is a major one. Better access to healthcare within the community is another. And a social structure that, as the source notes, often gives women more freedom and agency compared to some other groups.
It's a very positive social indicator that other communities can learn from.
For sure. We all hear about Christian contributions to education and health. Can you describe the scale of this impact?
While the source doesn't give specific numbers, their historical impact is immense and undeniable. Many of India's most prestigious schools and hospitals were founded by Christian missions and organizations.
Right.
They created an infrastructure for quality, modern education and healthcare that has benefited all communities, not just Christians. Their role in these social sectors has been foundational for modern India.
Let's talk more about this term, Ghar Wapsi. What is the core argument used by the fringe groups that promote it?
The argument they publicly use is that the original conversions of Hindus to Christianity were not genuine. They claim they were either forced or induced by offering material benefits like education or healthcare.
So they call it a homecoming.
Yes. Therefore, they argue reconverting these people is not a new conversion, but a homecoming or Ghar Wapsi. It's a very politically and emotionally charged issue that often leads to conflict on the ground.
Given their significant numbers in some states like Kerala or Nagaland, why haven't they formed a powerful pan-India Christian political party like, say, the Akali Dal for the Sikhs?
The source points to three key reasons for this. First, their population is spread out nationally, even with concentrations in some areas. Second, they are fragmented into many different denominations, Catholics, Protestants, Baptists, etc., who don't always align politically.
Right.
And third, they tend to have a more secular political outlook, meaning they integrate into and vote for mainstream national or regional parties rather than forming a party based solely on religious identity.
Now pause and practice saying this part aloud. Christians have high social indicators like literacy and sex ratio, but face challenges from fringe groups over the issue of religious conversion.
In short, a community with strong contributions, especially in social sectors like education and health, but one that is facing increasing external pressures and grappling with its own internal social divides like caste.
Next up, the Sikh community, a community known for its prosperity and martial history. Let's explore their story.
Topic name: discuss the status and problems faced by Sikhs in India.
Broad micro-theme: prosperity, politics, and painful memories.
भारत में सिख समुदाय, स्थिति और चुनौतियां.
All right, let's talk about the Sikh community. They form about 1.7% of India's population and are heavily concentrated in the state of Punjab and its neighboring states like Haryana, Delhi, and Rajasthan.
To understand this community, think of a young, successful Sikh entrepreneur in an urban area like Delhi running a tech startup. Their family's prosperity is very likely rooted in the agricultural success of the Green Revolution back in Punjab, right?
But at the same time, they also carry the stories told by their grandparents about the trauma of the 1984 anti-Sikh riots. This single image captures the community's unique mix of great economic success and deep historical pain.
That's a very powerful image. Let's dive deeper.
The story of the Sikh community in modern India is one of remarkable economic progress, strong political assertion, but also one that is haunted by the painful memories of partition and 1944.
Background, social status. Socially, Sikhism as a religion rejects the caste system in principle and preaches the equality of all humankind. However, the source makes it clear that caste persists in practice.
Another example of culture overriding religion.
Yes, there are landowning dominant castes like the Jat Sikhs, commercial castes like the Khatri and Arora Sikhs, and Dalit groups who are often called Mazhabi Sikhs. The source also notes the process of Sanskritization is visible in some sections.
Core logic, economic and political status. And economically, their story is incredible. They were transformed by the Green Revolution in the 1960s and 70s into one of India's most prosperous agricultural communities.
The breadbasket of India.
Exactly. In urban areas, they are heavily involved in trade, transport, and commerce. They're also very well represented in the Indian Defence Forces. Politically, they have been very active. The Punjabi Suba movement, a long struggle for a Punjabi-speaking state, led to the creation of modern Punjab in 1966. Political associations like the Shiromani Akali Dal have been very prominent in state and national politics.
Real-world impact. Problems faced. But they face very serious problems rooted in history. First, the wounds of partition in 1947, and, most critically, the 1984 anti-Sikh riots following the assassination of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi still linger.
They run deep.
Yes. This deep sense of injustice has, at times, led to separatist demands for an independent state called Khalistan from some fringe elements, especially in the diaspora. Another major issue is the constant politicization of river water sharing between Punjab and its neighboring states.
Conclusion, way ahead. So what's the path forward? The suggested way forward is for the state to protect the community from aggressive elements and ensure justice for past events. At the same time, the community leadership must work to prevent internal factions from supporting extremism and separatism.
This paradox of rejecting caste in theory, but practicing it in reality. Is it similar to what we see in other Indian communities we've discussed?
Yes, it's a recurring theme across the subcontinent. Social habits are often much stronger and more resilient than religious doctrines. In Punjab, land ownership and social status have historically been tied to caste identities like Jat.
Right.
These powerful social identities have persisted even after people converted to a faith like Sikhism that explicitly preaches equality. Marriage alliances, for example, still often happen along caste lines.
Can you explain how exactly the Green Revolution changed the community's fortunes so drastically?
The Green Revolution was a massive government-led initiative to boost food production using high-yield variety seeds, chemical fertilizers, and modern irrigation. Punjab, with its fertile land and canal network, became the epicenter of this revolution.
And the Sikh farming community, particularly the Jat Sikhs who owned most of the land, were quick to adopt these new technologies.
Absolutely. This led to massive agricultural surpluses, huge wealth creation, and made Punjab the breadbasket of India. It was a complete economic transformation in just a couple of decades.
What is the lasting legacy of the 1984 riots that the source mentions? Why is it still so raw?
The lasting legacy is a deep-seated feeling of injustice, betrayal, and alienation from the Indian state for many in the community. The widespread violence against ordinary Sikhs, particularly in Delhi, and the subsequent failure to bring many of the perpetrators to justice created a collective wound that has never fully healed.
And this unresolved trauma fuels a sense of grievance that fringe groups sometimes exploit for their separatist agenda.
That's the danger.
You mentioned the Khalistan movement is a demand from fringe elements. Is it still considered a significant threat today?
According to the source, it is primarily a demand from fringe elements. While it may not have widespread popular support within Punjab today, it remains a very sensitive and emotive issue. It is often kept alive by certain groups in the diaspora, outside India.
So it's a radical response to the unresolved pain and political grievances.
Yes, stemming from 1984 and other events.
And this river water sharing issue, why does it become so political and emotional in Punjab?
Water is the absolute lifeline for an agrarian state like Punjab. The entire economy is built on agriculture. Therefore, any perception that Punjab's river water is being unfairly diverted to neighboring states like Haryana or Rajasthan becomes an existential issue.
It's an issue of resources, state rights, and regional Punjabi identity, all rolled into one.
Correct. Which makes it a very powerful and easily politicized tool for political parties.
Now pause and practice saying this part aloud. The Sikh community story is one of great economic success, largely due to the Green Revolution mixed with deep historical trauma from events like the 1984 riots.
In short, a prosperous and politically active community that has contributed immensely to the nation, but is still grappling with the ghosts of its painful past.
Let's turn our attention now to one much older faith in India, Buddhism. What is the status of Buddhists in the land of the Buddha today?
Topic name. Discuss the status and problems faced by Buddhists in India.
Broad micro-theme, a renewed faith, Ambedkar's legacy, and modern challenges.
भारत में बौद्ध समुदाय, स्थिति और चुनौतियां. Okay, so the Buddhist community in India today forms about 0.7% of the population. They are mainly concentrated in three distinct regions: Maharashtra in the west, the northeastern states, and the North Himalayan regions like Ladakh and Sikkim.
To understand modern Indian Buddhism, imagine a young woman from the Mahar community in Maharashtra. Inspired by Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar's historic call in 1956, her grandparents converted from Hinduism to Buddhism to escape the caste system.
Right, the mass conversion.
Yes. Because of the huge emphasis on education that was part of this movement, she worked hard and became the first lawyer in her family. Yet, when she visits her ancestral village, she sees that the underlying caste prejudices from the dominant castes haven't entirely disappeared.
So her story is Dr. Ambedkar's legacy in action, with its incredible successes and its ongoing struggles.
Exactly. This is a fascinating story. Let's break it down.
Buddhism was born in India, but it had largely disappeared from the land of its birth for centuries. Its modern revival is a unique story of social revolution led by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar.
Background, social status. Socially, an overwhelming majority of Buddhists in India today are recent converts, especially Hindu Dalits who were influenced by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's mass conversion in 1956. For them, Buddhism is a path to social equality.
Right.
The source notes they continue to face residual discrimination from their previous caste identity. The Buddhists in the Himalayan regions, on the other hand, are considered the original Buddhists who have practiced the faith for centuries.
Core logic.
Economic educational status.
And their economic and educational status. Economically, they're engaged in a mix of traditional occupations and jobs in the public and private sectors. The Dalit converts in Maharashtra, known as Neo-Buddhists, have particularly benefited from the movement's focus on education.
And this is reflected in their literacy rate,
which is a very impressive 81.2%.
Real-world impact. Problems faced. Despite this progress, they face three major and very distinct problems. First, a declining population share. Their population share dropped from 0.8% in the 2001 census to 0.7% in the 2011 census.
That's a drop.
And the state of Karnataka, surprisingly, saw a shocking 75% decline in its Buddhist population in that decade.
75%. That's huge.
Second, a surprising new problem, the fear of extremism. The source mentions a fear of radicalization within the community due to the influence of conflicts involving Buddhists in other countries, like the Rohingya crisis in Myanmar and ethnic conflicts in Sri Lanka.
And third,
discrimination and violence continue. The violence that broke out in Bhima Koregaon in Maharashtra in 2018 between dominant caste Marathas and Dalits is cited as a case in point.
Conclusion, way ahead. So what's the path forward? The way forward requires serious examination of the reasons behind the population decline. And authorities need to be vigilant to prevent the infiltration of extremist ideologies from abroad while also tackling the persistent issue of caste-based discrimination.
What was Dr. Ambedkar's core reason for choosing Buddhism specifically for the mass conversion of Dalits? Why not another religion?
A very important question. Dr. Ambedkar saw Buddhism as the perfect vehicle to escape the Hindu caste system, which he believed was an inseparable part of the religion. He chose Buddhism for three main reasons. First, it was an indigenous Indian faith, not a foreign one.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, he saw it as a rational and scientific religion, free from superstition. And third, and most importantly, it was based on the core principles of equality, compassion, and non-violence, offering a path to social dignity that he felt was denied to Dalits within Hinduism.
A 75% population decline in a state like Karnataka is massive. What are the possible reasons for something so dramatic?
The source doesn't specify the exact cause, but such a dramatic drop often points to a few possibilities. It could be an issue with how people were enumerated and classified in the census.
A data issue?
Could be. Or it could point to a phenomena of reconversion back to Hinduism, possibly for social reasons, or, critically, to access certain scheduled caste reservation benefits that may not be available to them as Buddhist converts in some states. It's a serious demographic puzzle.
The idea of Buddhist extremism sounds like a complete contradiction in terms. I mean, we associate Buddhism with peace and non-violence. How is this possible?
It is indeed a paradox. However, in other countries like Sri Lanka and Myanmar, a very aggressive form of Buddhist nationalism has emerged in recent decades, which is often hostile towards minority groups like Muslims and Tamils.
Right.
The source suggests there is a fear among Indian security agencies that these radical political ideologies could infiltrate and influence some Indian Buddhist groups, which is a significant concern.
Can you briefly explain the Bhima Koregaon incident that the source mentioned? What is its significance?
The Bhima Koregaon incident refers to violence that broke out on January 1st, 2018 during an annual celebration. This event commemorates the 1818 Battle of Koregaon, where a small force of British soldiers, which included a large number of soldiers from the Mahar, Dalit community, defeated a much larger army of the Peshwas.
So for Dalits, this battle is a symbol of pride and a historic victory over caste oppression.
Exactly. The 2018 violence highlighted the continuing tensions and discrimination faced by Dalit communities, including Buddhist converts, from dominant caste groups in the region.
What's the main social difference between these original Himalayan Buddhists and the Neo-Buddhists who follow Dr. Ambedkar?
The primary difference is their origin and social context. For Himalayan Buddhists in Ladakh or Sikkim, Buddhism is their ancestral religion, practiced for centuries. Their social structure is traditional.
For the neo-Buddhists of Maharashtra,
Yes,
they are largely recent converts from Dalit backgrounds.
yes. For them, Buddhism is not just a faith, it is a powerful political and social statement against the caste system. Their identity is fundamentally shaped by the modern anti-caste struggle.
Now pause and practice saying this part aloud. Buddhists in India, largely inspired by Dr. Ambedkar's social revolution, have a high literacy rate but face new challenges like population decline and caste discrimination.
In short, a community reborn through a social revolution showing great educational progress but now facing complex new age problems that challenge its future path.
Finally, let's discuss our last minority community for today, the Jains, a small but very influential community.
Topic name. Discuss the status and problems faced by Jains in India.
Broad micro-theme, prosperity and paradox. The Jain community.
भारत में जैन समुदाय, स्थिति और चुनौतियां.
Okay, so last but definitely not least, the Jain community. They are a small but very influential community, forming just about 0.37% of the total population.
Very small percentage.
Yes, they are mostly concentrated in the western and central Indian states like Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Madhya Pradesh.
A perfect example to understand this community is to picture a young Jain woman who has an MBA from a top university. But by her own family and community's choice, she's a homemaker.
Okay. Her brothers, meanwhile, run the family's successful multi-million-dollar business. This single scenario highlights the Jain community's biggest and most fascinating paradox. They have the highest literacy rate in the entire country, but they also have the lowest female workforce participation rate.
Wow, that is a paradox. This is a classic case of a community defined by a paradox. Let's delve into it.
The Jain community is one of India's most economically successful and highly educated groups. But beneath the surface of prosperity, they are grappling with deep-rooted social traditions and complex modern questions.
Background. Social status. Socially, about 70% of Jains live in urban areas. In theory, Jainism has no caste hierarchy, but in practice, they follow a caste system very similar to Hindus, with most Jains identifying with the Vaishya or trader Varna.
Core logic, economic education status. And economically, they are a powerhouse. They are predominantly in trade and commerce, and some of India's biggest businessmen and industrialists are Jains.
And their dedication to education is reflected in their literacy rate.
Which is a staggering 94%, the highest in India.
94%.
Real-world impact, problems faced. But their problems are very complex and mostly internal. Real-world impact, problems faced. First, like some other small communities, they are facing a population decline in some regions.
Okay.
Second, they are dealing with divisive internal social issues. One is the practice of santhara, which is a religious vow of fasting unto death. Another is bal diksha, or the renunciation of worldly life by children to become monks or nuns. Both are highly controversial. And third, the biggest issue we mentioned, a very poor labor force participation rate for women, which is just 9%, despite their incredibly high levels of education.
Just 9%. Unbelievable. Conclusion, way ahead. The source suggests that the community and its leaders need to introspect deeply on these social issues and find a way to balance their ancient traditions with the needs and aspirations of modernity, especially concerning their women.
This paradox of the highest literacy but lowest female work participation is truly fascinating. What are the cultural reasons behind this?
While the source doesn't detail it, this phenomenon is often attributed to a combination of factors common in traditional business communities. First, there is immense family wealth, which often reduces the economic need for women to work.
Right.
And second, there's a strong cultural mindset that views a woman's primary role as being within the family, managing the household and raising children, regardless of her educational qualifications. Her education is often seen as a value add for marriage, not for a career.
Let's talk about santhara. What is the core ethical debate around it? It sounds very controversial.
The debate is a classic clash between religious freedom and the modern state's right to life. The Jain community sees santhara as a deeply spiritual and voluntary act of purification.
A way to embrace death with dignity.
Yes. However, critics and the Indian legal system have often viewed it as a form of suicide or euthanasia, which is illegal. It's a conflict between a modern legal framework and an ancient religious practice.
And why would a prosperous, highly educated community like the Jains be seeing a population decline? It seems counterintuitive.
Again, the source notes the decline, but not the specific cause. However, this is a demographic trend seen in many highly developed and educated communities worldwide. The reasons usually include high levels of education and prosperity, leading to lower fertility rates, a trend towards late marriages,
And a conscious decision to have smaller families.
Precisely.
Can you explain Bal Diksha a bit more? Why is it controversial enough to be listed as a major problem?
Bal Diksha is the initiation of a child, sometimes as young as 8 or 9, into the monastic order. They have to renounce all worldly possessions, their family, and all ties to live a very austere life as a monk or nun.
At 8 years old.
Yes, profound life-altering decision. They argue it infringes upon the child's fundamental right to education and a normal childhood. The community, however, often views it as a great spiritual honor.
The source suggests that Jain monks and leaders must initiate reforms from within, How much influence do they actually have in such a wealthy modern community?
In the Jain community, especially in the more traditional sects, respected monks and spiritual leaders hold immense influence. Their teachings and interpretations of religious texts can shape social norms and practices to a great extent.
So if any meaningful reform is to happen, their leadership and guidance would be absolutely critical.
Absolutely essential for it to be accepted by the wider community.
Now, pause and practice saying this part aloud. The Jain community is a major paradox of having the highest literacy rate in India, but the lowest female workforce participation rate.
In short, an economically successful and highly educated community that is grappling with deep-rooted social traditions that are often in conflict with modern questions of individual rights and gender equality.
Wow, what a journey through the diverse landscape of India's minorities. So हमने आज linguistic and religious minorities के broad theme को explore किया. Let's do a super quick recap of everything we learned.
Let's do it.
First, constitutional rights. We saw that our constitution gives minorities a powerful shield with Articles 29, 30, and special provisions for linguistic minorities like 350A and B.
The constitutional shield.
Second, linguistic minorities. इनके सामने language laws, poor policy implementation और discrimination जैसे बड़े challenges हैं.
A silent struggle.
Third, religious minorities. We learned that हर community की अपनी एक unique story है.
Muslims. They face a tough, vicious circle of poverty and illiteracy, compounded by discrimination and underrepresentation.
Christians. They have high social indicators but face attacks from fringe elements over the issue of religious conversion.
Sikhs. They are economically prosperous, but are grappling with historical wounds from events like 1984 and the challenge of fringe separatism.
Buddhists. They have high literacy thanks to Ambedkar's revolution, but face new challenges like population decline and continued caste discrimination.
And Jains. They have the highest literacy, but are grappling with internal social issues and a major paradox of very low female workforce participation.
Now, to really make this knowledge your own boast, try this. अपने आप से ये 6 सवाल पूछो. 1. What is the core difference between the right to conserve culture in Article 29 and the right to establish institutions in Article 30?
2. Can I name 2 key reasons why Article 350A, mother tongue education, is hard to implement on the ground?
3. What was the main finding of the Sachar Committee report regarding the Muslim community?
4. Which community has the highest sex ratio and which community has the highest literacy rate?
5. What is the concept of Ghar Wapsi and which community is primarily affected by it according to our sources?
6. What is the biggest paradox concerning Jain women that we discussed? And here's a simple challenge for you. Pick any one minority community we discussed today. अपने phone पे 2 minute का audio note record करो, pretending you are explaining their current status and one major problem to a friend who knows nothing about it. This will totally cement your learning. Trust me, it works. That's all the time we have for this super detailed deep dive. अगर आपको ये चर्चा इन्फॉर्मेटिव लगी and you feel a little more aware now, तो प्लीज हमारे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें, इस एपिसोड को अपने फ्रेंड्स के साथ शेयर करें और कमेंट सेक्शन में बताएं कि आप अगला डीप डाइव किस टॉपिक पर चाहते हैं.
Until next time, keep learning and stay curious.
समझे? चलो, बाय.